Alright, so today's gonna be a little different. I typically write out all my scripts, fact check everything, and really try to give my thoughts in a super polished and professional manner. But today's just not gonna be like that. Because today, EA pulled an absolute f***ing joke on its players and developers around the world. As today, EA has announced, or IGN via an article, has announced that they will be laying off Battlefield developers after the massive success that was Battlefield 6. Battlefield 6 was the best-selling game in the United States in 2025. They finally beat Call of Duty and were beating out other games like Arc Raiders for the last couple weeks of the year. However, 150 days or so into the live service, everything we have said, everything fans have complained about, is 100% true. And EA is finally responding, as I'm sure they watched the player engagement fall off a cliff, player spending go with it, and their huge initiative of a free-to-play battle royale, like it's fucking 2018, obviously not converting players to the full-priced $70 premium title. And what blows my mind more than anything is they had years to get this right. They said they listened to the fanbase. They said they were taking our feedback on board. Yet, not just is the live service a disaster today, underperforming titles like Battlefield 3 with its premium, it didn't come out of the gate perfect either. To this day, we still have fundamental gameplay issues. Things like netcode, audio, player visibility, server desync, and stuff like that is still here. Things that they should have known about for years during this development, and are all things that the Battlefield Labs initiative was supposed to be fixing. But like I've been saying for weeks, if not months, I believe all of this was smoke and mirrors. Battlefield Labs in particular, but obviously they spent more money on marketing, trying to get a product out the door, beat Call of Duty, make massive money, and now they're not just rug pulling the players, but they're rug pulling their own developers. These guys have been working their asses off across multiple studios for years, trying to get Battlefield 6 out the door. They finally did it, they convinced the fans to come back, and yet EA's master plan wasn't to innovate in any meaningful way, or get back to the golden age of Battlefield 3 and 4 with all that beautiful content from Battlefield Premium. Instead, they leaned into a concept that is several years old with a free-to-play, bog-standard battle royale, and hoped that 100 million players just wanted a different version of Call of Duty that was 6 or 7 years outdated. And here we are, just a couple months in, and fans immediately saw through the bullshit. They immediately felt EA pull the rug from under them, and immediately realized everything that they had bought into, what they'd spent $70 or $100 on, was total fabrication. This is not a golden age Battlefield. Battlefield 6 is nowhere near the scale and evolution of Battlefield 4, it's nowhere near the storytelling or grit of Battlefield 3, and it doesn't have the immersion or authenticity of Battlefield 1. And yet still cost more with more developers and more studios, and took 4 years to get here. Instead, what they've decided to do was boil Battlefield down to a bog-standard FPS on the shitty Frostbite engine, and then just get it to a position where they can package it up and copy and paste it next year for $70 again. So here we are now with EA boasting record-breaking sales, and then instead of investing that money back into the franchise, they're instead just firing the people that got them to that point. So instead of doubling down, adding more content, and growing this massive live service, they're instead just cutting their losses, cashing out, and cutting development. Like I said a few videos back, I believe the outcome of Battlefield 6 will either be doubling down, but that's clearly not happening, or I guess what's happening now is Battlefield is becoming a B-list title. I don't think they want to spend another $400 million on the next title, so what they're going to do is have all of these developers create Battlefield 6, create all these assets, gun mechanics, and so on, and then cut down the staff, copy and paste those assets, cut the budget, and turn Battlefield into a simple product that's just essentially an asset flip like Madden or FIFA. They came in, hired all these devs from all these world-class studios, used their talents to build the foundation and build out essentially just a product they can copy and paste, and are now, instead of investing back into the live service, which EA swears about 75% of their revenue comes from, are instead pulling the rug out from the developers, and instead of just moving them onto other projects, are apparently just flat out firing people. Instead of using these talented people to make, say, a spin-off game or put them back into development on other Frostbite projects, they're just flat out getting rid of the devs that led to their most successful sales ever. And I think most of this perceived failure from EA, which is obviously self-inflicted by leadership at EA, probably old guys in suits who watched their kids play Fortnite a couple years ago and then said, "I want that in my game," are the ones responsible for this big free-to-play Battle Royale initiative 5 or 6 years after it was cool. Instead of allowing the devs to come up with something new and unique, like let's say Delta Force's operations, they're instead taking orders from leadership that has no idea what modern gaming trends are, and just by coincidence happen to release near a game like Arc Raiders that just happen to show the future of gaming. While I've always been one to say that I'm happy to try a Battlefield Battle Royale because it should work in theory, the sad fact is a Battle Royale in 2026 is 6 or 7 years late to the party. They've been trying this since Battlefield 5 and it hasn't worked, and it still hasn't with Battlefield 6. They had to pay streamers to play it. Guys like Tim Patatman talking about how it's their new main game never touched it after their paycheck ran out. The dude played it twice, checked out, and is now playing other games where he's getting paid over there. So I think RedSec is a big part of this. Devs talking about how they spent years and years working on this just so we got a bog standard Battle Royale. But on top of this are all the legacy issues and poor development choices made by DICE and so on. Things like netcode, desync, player visibility, audio, and so on that hardcore players have seen fixed in the past and are thus frustrated by seeing again, things that annoy casual players as well, as they don't even understand what's happening. They just know this is a bad experience, so I'm gonna move on. Because that's what casual players do. They come in, they check it out, and then they move on. But these are all things that should have been fixed years ago throughout development or Battlefield Labs. At the end of the day, as pretty and cinematic and well marketed as Battlefield 6 was, it still doesn't play anywhere near as well as it should, whether it's audio, balance, gunplay, or so on. But at the other end of the spectrum, and I believe the reason that they're pulling support now, is I doubt the microtransactions are working. Like I said months ago in a video ranting about this game, I don't think this game can survive on tens of thousands of players when they were targeting 100 million players with hundreds of millions of dollars in development and thousands of staff. So at the end of the day, I just don't think the financials worked out, specifically because A, the game just didn't keep enough people engaged, and B, they've been trying to sell microtransactions to Battlefield players as if we're Fortnite or Call of Duty fans. Battlefield players are a very fickle bunch, and for the most part, I'd bet are on the older side of gaming. I'm 29 and most of my viewers are well into their 30s. This isn't some young crowd that wants to go grab their mom's credit card and spend money on dancing Fortnite skins. This is a more dedicated, hardcore fan base that wants to see the franchise they love, the franchise they've been playing for decades, expand in new, interesting, and meaningful ways. We want interesting new mechanics. We want interesting ways to engage with our favorite game in new and exciting ways with new environments, maps, narratives, and weapons. Basing the entire Battlefield series around cosmetics instead of content was a huge miscalculation. So, at the end of the day, to wrap up this whole episode with EA firing its staff, the people responsible for making the greatest selling product in recent years and the best-selling game of the entire 2025 calendar, this is what I'll say. EA has sold out its own player base. It sold out the fans that got Battlefield to where it is, and they sold out the fans who bought Battlefield 6 to begin with. EA bet everything on a super casual fan base coming in via its free-to-play Battle Royale as if it's Warzone from 2020, people who don't care about the gunplay or the balance of the mechanics or the netcode, and simply being wooed by the cinematics and the audio that are pretty, and then handing over their credit card hand over fist for cosmetics and $25 battle passes, while EA under-delivers and does the bare minimum, cutting support and creating a copy and paste asset flip that they can use in 2027. However, they severely underestimated their audience. An older generation of shooter fans that wanted something more grounded, heavier, more meaningful content, and less reliance on free-to-play modes and cosmetics. EA's business model severely miscalculated its own player base. It didn't understand who actually supported the game at its core, and instead sold out the fans of previous games for the attempt at a super casual player base that wasn't there anyway, and when they did show up, didn't care enough to stick around, because that's what casual fans do. They jump from game to game, and spending $400 million on a pretty game that doesn't have any content isn't gonna work with anybody, hardcore or casual. And we're seeing this trend continue as Season 2 didn't do anything to bring back players. In fact, its peak was still lower than the Season 1 numbers before it. So at the end of the day, EA's plan for Battlefield 6 really became one in the hand over two in the bush. Instead of investing into Battlefield as a platform and adding to it with meaningful content, like new maps, new modes, new single-player content, or co-op experiences, they instead went for the most formulaic, stale concepts possible, under-delivered on those, pulled support, and are now just gonna copy and paste it in a couple years with even less money, less staff, and less care. Battlefield 6's massive production wasn't a great second coming of the Battlefield franchise, it was instead laying the groundwork of a Madden-style experience for here to come. And while many of us gave Battlefield 6 the benefit of the doubt after we saw 2042 as just kind of a poor situation all around, I think EA has screwed themselves on the next title. Doing this song and dance where you finally beat Call of Duty and then immediately pull the rug out from all of your players after you had tens of millions of people show up to support your game, and then you spit in their face, pull back support, and fire the developers? I'm just at a loss for words. I hate to say that I told you so, and I hate to see people get fired, but at the end of the day, EA does need a wake-up call. If that means managers who made all of these terrible decisions get fired, so be it. But I think we all know nobody at EA is going to get in trouble, no executive producers are going to get fired, middle management and developers who worked their asses off are going to catch the blame, and until Battlefield goes to another publisher, I think this is where we're at. Battlefield, like I said in my previous videos, is just a product. Expect Battlefield to become a Madden or FIFA, where they just asset flip year to year, crank up the prices, pull support, and move on. But don't forget, the power is with the players. Vote with your wallet, move on to other games if you're not enjoying Battlefield, and at the end of the day, just ignore Battlefield like they've ignored you. But guys, that's my off-the-cuff reaction to today's news. So let me know your thoughts below, and for everything else Battlefield, stay tuned and subscribe, and as always, thank you guys for watching.